This actually has broad application, though. I
That's true.
mean,
Yeah.
this has application. We're specifically talking about pastoral ministry, but the application for this would even be helpful for you in your secular job, right?
That's true. That's a
I
very
mean,
valid point. The other day, I just had my YouTube music play, like just I had searched, I think, like worship music or something, and I was listening to it on the way to work, and then it got to this point where like this just music started playing, and then like 5 minutes into the ride, it was still going, and I'm like, hold on, this isn't, what is this? And then I pulled it up at a stoplight, and I'm like, it said something about like praise sounds, or it was like it's something like they would play at Bethel, like it was like piano synth in the back the whole time, and I'm like, what in the world? And then I had a really fun time where for the next 5 minutes I was like, all right, everybody, like, do you feel the Lord? So I had my own
yes,
little mock-up moment where I was like, the piano synth really brings the Holy Spirit, I can tell you. Like without it,
yeah,
is he even there?
yeah. They actually made an album called Synesthesia. Did you know that?
Bethel did?
Bethel did. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I didn't.
That's
But
that's the whole album. It's just instrumental.
if I was gonna have an album name, I wouldn't name it Synesthesia or something. It's just, that sounds weird, just in and of itself. I would call it like Sounds of the Spirit or something. I don't know, something
Yes.
or the Blue Genie. Only some people will get that reference from Jim. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
guys, so new format for the Babbling Pastor podcast. We're gonna go through one topic a month. You guys are either seeing this a little clip of this, or you're gonna see like the whole thing eventually. But we're gonna talk about stuff specifically directed, sometimes at pastors and sometimes directed toward the congregation. But today is specifically for pastors. So this is very. Not only is this a niche, it is a niche of a niche here that we're gonna talk about. But one of the thing that you gave me a list, but I think this is a really good sort of topic to
This
talk about.
this actually has broad application, though. I
That's true.
mean,
Yeah.
this has application. We're specifically talking about pastoral ministry, but the application for this would even be helpful for you in your secular job, right?
That's true. That's a very valid point.
So
Yeah, so it's intentionally prioritizing things that you're not gifted at, but you still need to do. This is going to be specifically the ministry stuff though. And I can only I'm not obviously in full-time ministry. You are. But even thinking about that, when I'm thinking about like preparing for a sermon or stuff, it's very easy for me just in that specific thing that I do to lean on what I'm super familiar with, what I'm really good at, and not go off
mhm,
a course on that. Um,
yeah,
and I can only imagine, especially with, as just a pastor with all the aspects there, it would be really easy to be like, well, I'm good at preaching, and I'm good at, maybe greeting people. But this whole visiting the sick thing, I'm not real comfortable with, or this like leading a
yeah.
smaller group. I'd be interested just to pick your brain on this. Obviously, you've been in the pastorate for what is it now? 2, 3 years?
Since I became full time at the most wonderful point in all of American history, April of 2020.
Nice. What better time
Yeah,
to
right.
where to get
Yeah.
in? So they're like, hey,
So
by the way, you're a pastor. You can't meet any of your people.
yeah, I still give the pastor that retired. Then I still give him grief sometimes because he threw me into the deep end. Absolutely, for sure. So, but
Yeah.
then God did that, so it is what it is. I can't get super mad, right?
Yeah.
It worked
Well,
out.
yeah, it's hey, by the way, Rob, I'm gonna retire, and I know like what literally just happened is gonna make this more difficult, but I'm out. So see you later. So as that, right? So that's 2 years essentially, of what Well, yeah, it has been 2 years. So within that 2 years, right? There's things that talk about maybe really quick what you were like. You were like, oh, I got this for sure. Like I don't got to worry about this or this, and then
Hmm.
maybe the part where you were like, oh, but crap. I got to do this other stuff too. And I'm not super comfortable with it.
Yeah, so I think probably the big one for me is I am um this actually might surprise you even, because when we hung out a lot back in the day, like for those of you who don't know, we live in separate places in the nation. Like we're not
Yeah.
having dinner tonight. And so um uh, uh, when we hung out like back in the day, this was not true of me. But I have become uh very introverted
Yeah,
as
that's not the Rob of the childhood. No.
right. Yeah, exactly. I've become really introverted, and to the point that like I could actually just sit here, and this chair behind me. That's my little reading corner, right? So I could just sit there and and live there until I go home every
Real
day.
quick, I do need to tell this story because I tell people this story a lot. This is the Rob that literally would go around with a notebook and like do an autograph and rip it off and hand it to total strangers and say, "This is gonna be worth something. This is gonna be worth something someday."
Oh man,
I
what and what a disappointment for them that has been.
I'm still holding on to the paper, be like, "No, bro told me that he was. This is gonna be a famous basketball player, and this is gonna be worth something."
I'm going to step out in faith here and just keep this and pin it on my wall.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
vision board. My vision board. Yeah. Anyway, that was
Yeah.
Rob back then.
So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because now every time I'm feeling bad about myself, I can go, you know what? I used to be a lot dumber. So, um, but I, for me though, that, um, complicates things, obviously, right? Like whenever I'm preaching, I feel that, and others around me, uh, see that is really a gift. So that comes pretty naturally. Um, and this kind of thing, technology, this kind of thing is easy, comes easy for me. But Sunday, other than preaching, I kind of force myself to do the other stuff. And it's not out of just obligation because that's the job description. It is out of a sincere love for the people here, right? So and that's important. um uh because you're just because you struggle with something doesn't mean that like in that situation, it doesn't mean that I don't want to spend 45 minutes after church interacting and having conversation with people because I don't actually like them. Right. It's just not comfortable for me. Like and there are times I'm sure when a new person shows up and I have an awkward moment where I don't really know what else to ask to keep the conversation going, like, and like, I know that happens. Right. And, but so for me, that's one thing. And I think you joked about visiting the sick. That's something that I've grown in some, but that's also not natural. Visiting, being with people, um, is not particularly if it's someone that I don't know super well, right? Like there are some people in our small groups now that have been a part of our small groups long enough that for me it's like easy peasy. It's just like having someone in my family around, right? So it doesn't take it out of me like some other things do. Um but if I'm just being really honest, like it takes um it Sunday wears me out, and part of it isn't just preaching. um and so that's probably the biggest thing that I could think of personally, that I have to intend, because that's part of it. That's what that's what they that's what the people long for. It's actually biblically part of the job description. It's what I should be doing, is being with the people. And I can point to lots of conversations that have been good and helpful for me and for others, because I'm kind of training myself or forcing myself into those situations. I just had one of those conversations the other day. We just baptized two people Sunday, and they came to our small group that evening. And the young lady, that's a married couple, the young lady comes up to me at the end of that, and asks something that she'd been wondering about. She has siblings who ask her questions about the LGBTQ thing, and she knows what she believes, and she believes the right things, but she doesn't really know how to answer them and how to talk to
Mm-hmm.
them. So that isn't a super comfortable moment for me, right? But it's necessary, and it was helpful for her. Uh, and so that's just one example, but there are lots of them, um,
Yeah. Well,
like that.
and I think a lot of, so just talking about like, so just by nature of not only the area I live in, but the things I do as far as online, I know a lot of different pastors. And what's really interesting is that everybody, where you're good at one area, there's usually a not a deficiency, but like you really got to work through the other areas, right? So there's some pastors that I know that are like, they're like, what they would prefer to do is just have everybody over all the time. They're super hospitable. They love that
Yeah.
aspect of it. The preaching part, they don't really like that, like, because they don't feel like it's relational. They feel like it's like one pastor was like, I'd rather just have small group all the time because that there's a lot of feedback, there's a lot of back and forth because I don't have to guess what people are thinking. And so, like, it's just very interesting in that. And you did bring up, and I don't have the screen set up, so I can't do this. But if you guys want to, 1 Timothy chapter 3, we do have qualifications for overseers. So I think
Yeah.
we should probably read this really quick. And it says this: the saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to be the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, a husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well, with all dignity, and keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage the household of his own household, how will he care for the God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace or into the snare of the devil. And what's really interesting in that is you have so many different things. So there's guys that I know that are like naturally, I don't know if naturally quarrelsome would necessarily be the right term, but like they're not like,
Mm.
they're very like in your face, sort of like if you say something, they're not intentionally trying to be like, they don't want to fight with you, but they just want to push back a lot. And so there's some guys that I know that have to like really be like, oh, like I've got to chill for a second, like. And so I think as a pastor, and like you said, I think we can probably bring application in this a little later as we're talking for everybody, but as a pastor, it's one of those things where I think being, and this is where I would say, I'm not saying that like people that are younger out of college, for example, like right out of university, maybe right out of seminary, like it's, I think it's that point in time where it's so important to have um, mentors in the faith, people older than you, people that have been through it a little bit longer. It's sort of the Titus 2 sort of concept, that are able to speak and be like, hey, these are the areas that you're really good at. And these are the areas that maybe you need to like push yourself at a little bit, because most of the time we're not like real apt to push ourselves in the areas that we don't think we're strong at, because one, we're probably insecure in them anyway, because we know we're not good at them. And two, we'd much rather focus on the things we're really good at. And so the gentleman that I talked to about the one that would rather have small groups than preach, like he really has to push himself to say, okay, I need to sit down, I need to do this outline, I need to make sure. But one of the things that I really admire in that situation is that he takes what he's good at, like the small group sort of situation, and tries to meld that into the sermon. So that's the
Sure.
discussion we
Yeah.
had. It was a matter of like, hey, you're really good at saying, okay, well, what are they probably thinking about? Or what are the questions, now that you've done this forever, that you know they're probably going to ask? And then you can sort of put that and make that part of your sermon. And so it has that feel, but obviously it's not quite that. Obviously, they're not going to, unless you're in a Quaker congregation, they're not giving you feedback during your sermon. And so
Hmm.
It's that, what am I good at? What am I bad at? And how can I sort of mesh those together a little bit?